tightened all these bolts down. Now look, I didn't tension them. I just do them up with my spanner here. Now if you were to tension them, probably 20 to 25 foot-pounds would be plenty. Yeah, in that manual I actually couldn't find a torque, but yeah, 5/16 UNC bolt is around 20 foot-pound, so that would be okay. Now you can see the centre plate there's slopping around. That's okay. That's because these transport screws are still engaged. So what I like to do, I just try and like to make sure that's sitting in the middle there nicely, and then we can start to release these nice and evenly. And you'll notice the fingers coming up. So as the fingers come up, that's the tension coming on the main drive plate there. And don't throw these screws away, put them in your toolbox. Or if you ever decide to do another clutch. So we'll just pop these fellas out and just see. And you'll notice when I pull that out then, the plate won't drop. It's already clamped in, it's at the proper tension that it should be. And there are your bolts there. They're UNF bolts, and what's that, 2.5 inches of thread maybe, just guessing. I remember one time I sold a fellow a clutch and he rang up and said, that bloody new clutch I bought off you on his 188, he says, it's slipping, it's no bloody good. And I said, oh, I better come and have a look. So I drove about 30 k's out of town and he'd left these in. He bolted the clutch up and yeah, the PDO worked, but I think the PDO worked. But anyway, when he went to drive off, the tractor just sat there and he still had these transport bolts in. So luckily it didn't have a loader on. I could hop in underneath, the plate underneath there. I could pull the transport screws out. She clamped up and went beautifully. So poor old fella felt like a fool, but yeah, we've all done silly things, haven't we? So, okay, so now this clutch tool can come out, and so that's been up in the spigot, up in the clutch. So this will be nice and true to the whole works there. This will be all clamped in, so yeah, just lovely. You can feel it pull out of the bearing too. You can see on the tool where it's been on the bearing. So okay, so that's fitting the clutch. Now let's have a look at a couple of things here. Now in the book, when the pivots wear in these clutches here, they get wear here, wear down the bottom, wear in this main shaft here. To get the PDO to release properly, these fingers have to go right down and actually tag these rivets here. And you'll see many clutches, and the one I took out of this had them tagged. So in the book, there's actually a thing that says to stop that happening, you can put a little chamfer on the back of the bolt here, 5/32 of an inch. So when it goes down, it doesn't touch. I don't know, whether you do that or not, it's entirely up to you. Now at this stage, all you need to do is make sure that these are level. Now on this one, you may be able to see a bit of white paint there. So what happens, they've set this up in a proper jig. The luck companies set it up in a jig. They've made sure these are true, and they've locked the bolts and put a bit of paint on them just to make sure they've been checked and tightened. So they've also put a bit on these pins so they know that they've been knocked in properly so they can't come out. So the main thing with them is if you don't have the tool, there is a tool that comes from your shim here across, and it measures to the top of that bolt there and across the other side there. Now I will try, I'll have a quick look at the book. I read it earlier, but of course I can't remember it, can I? So from the clutch surface inside there to the finger is it says 13. Okay, it says from the bottom of the finger there to the top of here, point, so that measurement there, that says 0.654. There's your shipping bolts, you can see, coming through. Now I did read in here, okay, on your PDO plates, it's 80 thou. We won't hop into that just yet. Relief levers. The height from the flywheel face is 4 and 13/32 or 111.9 millimetres. The height from the spacer, face of the spacer ring segments, which is these ring segments here, you know, the bits of fan here, from the top of that across to the top is 2.65 inches or 67.3 millimetres, and movement at the lever ends. Okay, so they're saying by this moves 654 thou down, a bit over 5/8 of an inch, the clutch should be released. The height, the variance in these from one to the other should not exceed 15 thousandths of an inch. So that should cover a bit of that. Now I will shift the camera around and we'll have a look at the PDO finger adjustments. So you have a figure from there. Now just to get a piece of flat bar with a couple of bolts there and measure them at the distance of 67.3 millimetres or 2.65 inches from there across, that would give you a measurement for that. But I've found in the past that whether this is up a little bit or down a little bit, you know, a couple of millimetres, don't be too concerned with it. The main thing is that these are even, so that when the throwout bearing pushes on here, the plate comes off evenly and you don't get hot spots, don't get worn patches. So I'll put the camera back around here and we'll talk about adjusting the PDO clutch. So you can see there's a little screw here and a lock nut there. Now when you put your foot on the clutch, the main pressure plate in here comes back, and this is bolted into the back of your main pressure plate. So once that pressure plate comes back 80 thousandths of an inch, which gives the main plate clearance to turn freely, the head of this bolt here pushes on this plate here. And this plate here pushes against the spring on the PDO plate, and that releases your PDO. So the PDO plate is jammed between this housing here. So you have your main cover, then there's another section down in there. It's jammed between that and this piece here. So I found in the past, sometimes I drop this down to around 60 thousandths of an inch. The book says 80 thousandths of an inch plus or minus 2 thousandths of an inch. So to adjust that, you loosen the lock nut here, you adjust this screw with a feeler gauge in the hole there, and you lock it back up again. Once again, you make sure that these are all even. But at 80 thousandths, that means the pedal has to go down quite a way to release the clutch. Well, it'll release, but then to engage a second stage, it has to go quite a long way down. Now, as the main clutch wears, the main drive clutch wears, this gap gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it gets to the stage where you can put your foot on the clutch, it releases the clutch here, but this gap is too big to release the PDO clutch. So if you have the main clutch working nicely, then the PDO clutch here not releasing at all, check that gap. Now the book says 80 thousandths of an inch. I can pull them down to 60 thou and get them working nicely. So it's just a matter of where the head of the screwdriver is there. That there is where you take the measurement between the head of the bolt and the plate here, and this plate here. Book says 80, I often pull them down to 60 and it works, but as the main clutch wears, this gap gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So if you set it at 60 or 70 to start with, you can have 10 thou wear on your plate before you have to do any other adjustments. Now, this adjustment can be done in the hole under the bell housing. So you can lay under the tractor if it hasn't got a loader on it and that plate's not blocked up for some reason. You can do this adjustment there. The only other adjustment you can do is level these fingers out. There's no other adjustments at all apart from your clutch free travel, which we'll cover when we put the tractor back together. But this is how you adjust the PTO clutch. So once you've bolted the clutch on like we have, you've checked your finger heights are level. You can do it with a vernier from this clutch surface there. You've checked that these are all even. Well, you're right to go. A little bit of grease on the main splines, but I don't tend to put much on because I don't want it throwing out and making a sticky clutch. I put a little bit on the main shafts that go in. But yeah, look, that's it. That's the clutch job done. So hopefully that'll help you do yours.